If you're thinking about growing microgreens and you're kind of confused on how you're supposed to grow different crops with different day schedules, you might be looking at radish. Let's say they're 7 to 10 days. Pea shoots might be 8 to 12 days. How are you supposed to manage these crops on different schedules? Well, when they have overlapping ranges like that, you can actually consider each of those crops a 10-day crop, and you can actually fit that into a consistent schedule so that you have 3 to 4 days of crops where they're germinating, and then you have 6 to 7 days where they're under lights. And what that does for you is that you can have the same planting day and the same harvest day every single week, and you can consistently provide product for either a farmer's market or selling to chefs or home deliveries, whichever sales channel you choose. You can fit this into your growing cycle. So what I did was I created a tool that, one, manages your orders. So I primarily sell to chefs. So as you can see, there is restaurant 1, restaurant 2, restaurant 3. And then below, just for each of the crops they order, we are going to plug in how many ounces of that product we need. We generally sell in a 4-ounce or 8-ounce format to chefs. Some of our specialty crops like leeks, we do by volume, but I know that that ends up being about 2 ounces of product that fills a 4-ounce container. So just for example, let's say I have a chef, restaurant 1, he's going to order a pound. And again, you just enter in ounces how much they're ordering. So a pound is 16 ounces. Let's say they're going to order 2 units of leeks. So that's 2 ounces times 2 would be 4 ounces. And then pea shoots, let's say they order 8 ounces of that. And then our red radish, let's say that they want a pound of that. Now, just for example, let's do one more restaurant. Let's say they do 8 ounces of brassica blend, which is essentially a salad mix. They do a pound of peas. This third restaurant, let's say they do radish trio. Let's say they're going to do a pound, and then they're going to do a pound of this broccoli brassica blend. So you can see what's happened here is that we now have a total number of trays. So we have 12 trays that we need to plant. We haven't yet generated what our planting day is. We're going to go to the next tab after I highlight this section, and you'll see that this will auto-populate with your farm schedule planting day. So we have 12 trays total we're going to plant. This helps me prep all the soil and trays to get them ready, and also just a tally of all the different crops we're going to grow. You can see I'm going to do 5 trays of this brassica blend, 1 tray of leeks, 2 trays of peas, 2 of this radish trio, and then 2 of this red radish. Now, to get this set up before you start adding orders and to get these calculations, you can come over here and you have a few things that you need to set up. So just across the header, anything that's highlighted gray is a calculation field, and you won't actually edit those. But these two here, sow rate and yield per tray, are things that you'll need to set up. It might change over time. So for sow rate, again, this is just how many grams of seed we're going to put on a tray to get a targeted yield. These can vary, but as you can see, are different brassicas. So this broccoli blend, broccoli, kohlrabi, if you're doing kale, they're all very similar in the grams that you're going to need. Leeks, we need a little more. Usually the seeds that need soaking are quite a lot more because they're bigger seeds and they're heavier. And then most of our radish here is the same. So you're going to want to plug in your sow rate. Again, you can change that at any time, and that would then change these outputs over here. Also with yields per tray, if you're brand new to growing, you can actually weigh your total harvest and average that per tray. So let's say I grow 3 trays of broccoli and I got like 9 ounces, I got 7 ounces, and I got like 8.5 ounces. You might just want to say, to be on the safe side, that you got 7 ounces per tray or maybe 8 ounces per tray. And then after you've done a couple cycles, you're going to get pretty consistent outputs. I have had instances where, let's say on a radish, I got a different batch, or peas. I wasn't getting the same output as I was before, you can go down here and let's say now I'm only getting 10 ounces of peas instead of 2 trays of peas. It's now going to do 2.4, which then rounds up to 3 trays of peas. So you can adjust this as you go. You do not need to weigh your total yield every time. It's a waste of time, especially if you're using a tool like this. You're going to have pretty consistent orders and you're going to have pretty consistent outputs. So there's really no reward in your efforts to do all that weighing. So that's kind of how we plug in all of our orders, all of our sowing and yield rates, and then let's jump over to the production schedule planner. So as I mentioned before, you can kind of systemize your planting schedules so that you're not harvesting peas on day 11 and radish on day 7. You just put everything into this 10-day cycle and kind of adjust accordingly. So before I highlight all of the different crops, what you want to do is start with your harvest day. And let's say I want to harvest on Thursdays because that's when my schedule allows me to harvest. So what you want to do is just work backwards. So then the day before that would be Wednesday. And if you're in Google Sheets or Excel, if you highlight 2 cells and it identifies a pattern, you can either highlight down and it'll continue to fill out that pattern, or you can highlight up and it'll actually pre-fill all of those for you. If you're not comfortable managing Google Sheets or Excel, you can just manually type these in reverse order. And you can see that now Monday is actually going to be our planting day. So if we go over to the planting and order management schedule, you can see that Monday is now our planting day, and we're going to do 12 trays total that day, and these are the number of various crops. So what I can do with this information is I can actually go prep containers of seed for these, and I use little 4-ounce sauce cups that you might see at a restaurant. And I would pre-weigh out the seed, so then I would have 12 cups. Well, I wouldn't have 12 cups. I would have these different amounts of dry seed measured in the cups. And then anything that I'm soaking is actually going to be pooled into like a nut milk bag, or you can use paint strainers. And I would just pool all of that seed together in a bag and then soak those in a bucket of water the night before you're going to plant them. And so what we've done here is we have this sow total column, and that actually will multiply the number of trays times the amount of tray per seed, and that'll give you the total amount to weigh. And this is handy because you can just weigh all 460 grams of seed all at once instead of doing it multiple times. So back to the production planner. If you want to change mess around with different days where you can plant, let's say you're going to plant on Sundays because that's when you can do it. Again, you can reverse engineer this any which way you want to go. But I think it's helpful to start with, when do I need to harvest and deliver, especially if you are doing delivery, because that's going to be the most time intensive probably activity that you'll have throughout the farm. Planting might not take that long. And then the rest of this is just like watering barely takes any time. Unstacking and all that doesn't take very much time. So the highest energy demands are your planting day, but your most by far is harvest and delivery. So I kind of broke this out by groups of crops that we grow. I grow brassicas. So again, here I've grouped anything that's kale, kohlrabi, cabbage, broccoli, your broccoli mixes or salad mixes. All of these are the brassica family, and they have very similar grow cycles and oftentimes very similar weights that you're going to use to sow. So if you're unsure of how to grow a crop and you see that it's a brassica, look up a similar brassica and how many grams you'd use to seed that, and start there and adjust to get a general output or standard output that you're looking to get per tray. Everything here, we stack for 4 days, except brassicas, we do 3 days. I found if I push it to 4 days, the stacking, I tend to get more mold. I tend to get some webbing and mold. So if you stack too long, sometimes you can invite mold to come in. We don't do any blackout during germination. When we blackout, it's stacked. There's no in between. Some people will unstack, flip trays over. It's just an extra step that I haven't seen any need for or any potential benefit, so I just cut it out. We either stack or we don't stack. So we do soak peas and popcorn. Again, you'll kind of see any really large seeds that you're going to grow. Probably they don't require soaking. There are farms that do it without soaking, but having them soaked speeds up that germination and makes sure that they don't dry out, and it'll give you a nice consistent germination rate on those crops. You can soak anywhere from 4 to 12 hours. I just ballpark overnight. I don't time it. If I'm in a pinch, let's say I was out of town and I forgot to soak seeds on Sunday or whatever, you could just do it Monday morning when you're going to be planting, and then just plant your peas later in the day. You could still plant everything else in the morning if you want, or you can just push your whole planting day back. Again, since we're using ranges here and fitting everything into a 10-day cycle, there's some wiggle room with all of these things. So it's very stringent, but at the same time very flexible. So as you can see here, Monday is going to be our planting day, and then really for days 1 and 2 after that, there's really no tasks. There are, because you can see this will overlap, but if you're going just for one plant crop cycle, there's really nothing to do. They just sit stacked. All the 4-day ones get an extra day stack, and then on day 3 or 4, we are going to unstack, move under lights, and then water those crops from the bottom. The only exception is popcorn. We unstack, water, but then we actually do put an upside down tray and some plastic garbage bags to completely black it out. And we just make sure that there's a lot of airflow underneath those. So that's the only thing that doesn't go under lights, which is actually a benefit, because then we can grow more crops. If we're maxing out the amount of electricity that we're using and we can't add more lights, we can still kind of bump up our revenue a little bit by adding popcorn and trying to sell that product, because it doesn't actually use one of our most limiting resources, which is space under lights. And then you'll see with popcorn too that we actually, once we do that initial water, because the system's kind of closed, there is a little less airflow, we don't water the crop ever again when we harvest it on day 10. Peas are super forgiving. You can water them every day. Things do tend to take up more water as you go. I do not recommend watering the day before harvest. There's a risk of overwatering and just having super wet product, because at that point you have so much biomass from all the crops crowding in a tray that if you water too close to harvest, you're just going to have sopping wet product. I found that you can easily skip a day of watering and the product is dry enough to then pack, and you don't have to worry about moisture control within the final container. And just as a note, anytime that I do say water from, other than the first day when it's unstacked, if you're watering on just a water only day, you can skip those. So again, we're just going tray by tray, bottom watering, and we're just checking to see, is there still standing water? Is the tray heavy? Is it light? And I'll skip trays. I'll skip whole days. I used to, in fact, on our past farm schedule, it was a farm not in our house. So instead of having to drive there to water on the weekends, I would actually water real good on Friday, skip Saturday and Sunday. A couple things might be a little wilty on Monday, but come in Monday morning and water, and it kind of brings everything back to life. And then we would just water, one more day, and then not water before harvest. And that really worked well. So people who are watering twice a day, completely unnecessary. I would say, depending on the crop, your conditions, maybe even once a day or every other day, depending on where you are in the growth cycle. So that's a quick overview of how you can use this to figure out when you're harvesting, when you're planting. And then this is kind of a one-time setup just to get an idea, especially if you're new to growing. And then from there, you can just use this to manage your orders. Let's say the chef calls me and they're like, we only want 4 ounces now. It's going to update. So for my next planting, I only have 11 trays now instead of 12. And this keeps a really tight output. If that makes you uncomfortable and you want a little buffer, you could actually, let's say you want to do like a tray of everything. you could just add like a buffer account. And let's just say you want like 4 ounces of everything extra, only if you're growing it. So not on broccoli, but let's say you want an extra. Just add in extra units and it'll kind of pad that. And if you want, you could always hide that column, or you don't have to, whatever makes sense for you. And the other thing about this is that, again, we primarily sell to restaurants and chefs. So if you are wanting to use this for like home deliveries or farmers markets, you just kind of have to do estimates. So let's say you did, farmers market. After you've done a couple rounds, you're going to have an idea of like, okay, I'm going to sell, 2 pounds of this blend, and you can just add those in there. Again, you could add buffers to that if you want, but then that'll give you a target. Let's say we're going to do 4 pounds of peas, and you can just kind of pass that in here and use that as a projection for what you're going to grow, and it'll automatically calculate how many trays, how many seeds to soak in grams, and it just really does everything for you. Again, this model is kind of based off of Ben Hartman's Lean Farming, the Lean Farm book, where he had, what he does is he collects all his orders, because he's a market farm, he does more than microgreens, and he has all of his field crops that he's got down this column, which is how we have it organized, and then he has all his accounts across the top, and then he just fills in weekly. Again, this is just on a dry erase board, what orders he wants people to go pick, and then they just mark things off as they pick. And I've tried some fancy microgreens planning software. I've tried other things to kind of build databases with these to input orders and collect on a form, but I keep coming back to this method because I can see everything I have just at a bird's eye view, across all things. And I've actually caught mistakes here where orders weren't updated, but I remembered a chef was like, wait, I only want 8 ounces of this anymore. Or worse is when they want to increase it and you forget to do that, and then you have to short them for like a week or two. So this is by far the best way to see all of your accounts, all of their orders, and just get a quick output of what you're planting, so you can prep your seed and plant your trays, and it just makes it so much easier. The only downside of this is that this is just a snapshot in time, so it's hard to track your number of trays per seed over time. You could extract that information and create your own tab to do that, but you can actually, I think, go into version histories of these and manually name them. So what I have done in the past is when I do that, if I'm planting Monday the 12th, I will title it Monday, December 12th. And then I'll be able to go through that version history and kind of see, okay, we planted 7 trays of Bresca blend. There's really only 6.5 spoken for. So if this chef wants to go from 4 to 8 ounces, I can probably make that happen this week. Otherwise, they're going to have to wait till the next week's order. So if you do that and kind of track your version histories as planting days, that is a great way to kind of see, because that is one hole in this program, or one weakness, is that it's hard to determine if you have enough extra product to supply these chefs when they want to increase their orders. Usually just the general statement I give them is, I will try and get that to you next week, but for sure it'll be the week after. And then I just make sure I input things into FreshBooks, which is our invoicing software that we use to then run a harvest report on harvest day. But I'll get into that in a different video. But there are ways to kind of figure that out. But that is one weakness for the system. If you do want a copy of this kind of schedule planner and order management template, please check out the landing page down below, and you can sign up for our email list and you'll get a free copy of this. You can make a copy, save it into your own Google desktop, and you'll have it available to manipulate how you want to. One final thing, if you do want to add a crop I would recommend, because there are formulas in these cells, copying an existing one, adding it below. And let's say we're going to do kale. I'm going to get 8 ounces yield. Let's say we'll do 24 grams of seed. I think I used to do 25. And now you can see I can add kale, 8 ounces of that, and it is added into here. So make sure you copy a row. If you want to move things around, you can actually do, I believe, hold shift, and then you can drag and drop. Oops. So if you highlight that, shift, and then drag, you can move it up. Well, it's not working, but there is a way to shift and then drag and drop the whole cell. So anyway, that's it for the production planner. Thank you for checking it out, and I hope this helps you organize your workflow and realize that growing microgreens doesn't have to be crazy to plan and track. It can be quite simple, and you can actually fit it into a model that makes sense for your responsibilities and workflows.